Welcome back to the Let's Talk About Autism in Hmong podcast, Season 2. Today, we'll be diving into early intervention and how it can be helpful for families whose young child presents with developmental delays with speech or other areas of concern. Joining me for today's episode is Galia Yang, who has a background in early childhood and development, who shares about her experiences educating families about the benefits of early intervention. Hi, and welcome to the Let's Talk About Autism in Hmong podcast. This is Tia, and for today's show, we are talking about a topic that is very, very important to me and near to my heart. If you listen to any of my podcasts, you will always hear me get on my soapbox, and I will say, early intervention, just do it, get you also. But we never really dove into it as its own topic. It was like a sidebar comment I'd make, maybe on speech or anytime I had a guest sharing their story and we're like, yeah, you should do early intervention. So today I am so excited to welcome to the show Kalia Yang to talk with me more about early intervention. Welcome to the podcast, Kalia.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I think when we were talking about, what are some topics in the Hmong community, in the Hmong autism community that, needs a little bit more discussion, and you said early intervention, I was like, yes, early intervention itself. I am 80% confident and positive that a lot of our Hmong families have heard of that. If their kiddo is young and before they are 3, you want to hide the early intervention. Or if it's not called that, then every state is different, right? They call it something different. Like
Mm-hmm.
in Missouri, it's like first steps, right? And I think in Minnesota, it's like help me grow. And yeah, so like the early intervention program. I mean, it's called something different, but essentially it's for 18 months to 3 years old, right? That's when they would
Mm-hmm.
consider early intervention. And so, we all understand that it is for the kiddos who may show some signs of delay, right? You don't need to have a diagnosis to get it. But then the focus of our podcast today is talk about why we need to really encourage our Hmong sisters and brothers to really, I would say, embrace early intervention and not be afraid
Yes.
of it, and really understand how helpful it is to for your child to be successful. So before we really dive into that, Kalia, please tell me, what is your background in working with individuals with autism?
So, 더운데나 I was like, what is GPR? And it was really hard because like it's the typical like mukunda doctor, mukunda nurse, but that just didn't call to me. I've always known in my heart that mukunda ito na ko. And before choosing like elementary, middle school, high school, college, I was reflecting on like what was impactful, and I boiled it down to like middle school and elementary. And then I thought about it and I was like, oh, preschool was really impactful for me. And then, so I went on that route. And as I kept going, I've learned so much, especially emphasis on children with special needs. They, my student teaching, I got into a classroom where like, mainly children with developmental delays, and there was a number of them that more autism. Could really like, oh my gosh, my passion, burning fire within me, like just arose. So when I started becoming my own teacher, I taught in Caldwell County and children with autism, and there were other children with developmental delays too. And so I was a teacher for 5 years, and so that's my background with working with them. And Toku, it was really hard because, you know, local chate, but then
Mhm.
ultimately I understood that they should have, and
Mhm.
I love it so much because when I finally find that niche and then they just blossom from there, it just speaks to my heart where I'm just like, wow, and so I just love it so much being able to embrace that and have them be able to flourish in that way.
That's awesome. Although I cannot let this podcast go on without me asking you, Kalia, um, how come you didn't go into ABA? How come you didn't? Did you know about ABA and that it's a possible?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And so that is another reason why Guluhapia Guinsao Ba Oli Nona, like to spread more awareness because
Mhm.
um I didn't know that there was others because Toku B Kriandana, I worked alongside of like speech therapy, occupational
Mhm.
therapy, physical, so many therapists. And I was like, whoa, this was options,
Yeah.
and so I realized that like maybe that was the route I should have went, that, really specialize in those specific skills. But I do love having being the teacher, being able to have a whole classroom and the routine and structures through that. But after I learned about that, I was like, oh, maybe I do want to go through the behavior technician route, or like. And so I started doing research on ABA therapy, and I started
Mhm.
doing research on how I can get there. So that was something that I was considering last year, but I've ultimately decided that I will just focus on the skills that I do have now, and that I will just, if it is meant to be for me, then I will go that route later on.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it takes a really special person to be a teacher because I am in the field. I am a behavior analyst, but I mean, let me tell you what, I work better doing one-on-one. Like, I would love to handle, like, a whole classroom, more than I mean, I used to lead groups and everything of, like, dozen, but, like, double that, like, 20 some kiddos. That's just not my strength, that's just not my jam. Someone who's like, "That is my jam. I love it. I'm good at it. That's amazing." But I just want to share, yeah, similar to yours. Growing up, you hear there's two things that you can do, right? As a Hmong person, maybe Asian, maybe let me more broad. As an Asian person, you're gonna be either a doctor or a lawyer. And you're like, okay, what if I'm not good at either of those? What do I do? And it's a
Hmm.
journey on its own to go find out. And yeah, it was really hard because you're like, I remember when I told my parents about psychology, they was like, no, you're not going to find a job with that. I'm like, well, you know what? I love it. Like psychology, just wait. It woke up something inside of me, and then, kind of stumbled upon this. It's not even a job anymore; it's a career. So
Hmm.
definitely for any listeners who are like, you have met someone with autism, and you're like, how do I help? How can I? Or maybe you had a connection, and you're like, oh, I wonder if there's a way for me to do this. It definitely is, and definitely reach out. There's more to learn about that. So, Kalia, let's talk about in your role as a teacher then. What did you um, impart on parents about early intervention then? Because you said it was early childhood, right? And so
Hmm.
I don't know if you spoke to a lot of Hmong families in the area the region that you worked in, but if you did, if you met someone, how would you explain early intervention to them and why it's important for them to start their child in early intervention?
So I did get to hold a few conversations um,
Yeah.
with the Hmong, and ultimately, going. This is just from my own perspective. Going, but I feel like they more conchai
Mm-hmm.
because they just lo te po they tu minyo linda na. And
Mm-hmm.
then basically they'll grow out of it. Like, they have their own time, and to they mong lo chi chua po they are professionals. And so they don't understand that what we're saying is that they 반창가 lo 쓰배요. And Tobe had saw early intervention. What does that mean? It's kind of like tokomobe, doctor and pediatrician for checkups, and they're like, oh, good mean nu you hai abe lu nu like zanu deli no. It's not a checklist, or it's not saying that your child is good or bad, but essentially it's stating that we don't want to miss out or overlook on anything and see that eventually it was a delay, you know? And so noticing these delays will help, you know, get you on track. So then it helps them be able to flourish a little more. I think another thing that we need to really emphasize, especially with Hmong, is that child's brain development is the most impactful in the first 2,000 days. But yeah, so then from lo yu lo, even during pregnancy, really, but from that time period all the way to lo mukondo, like Jishangke, everybody was born lo lo lu kia ti gang hand. You know, you really think about it, we grow and learn so fast. We come from a baby that can't do nothing, and we have to rely on everything from our parents, to learning how to eat, learning how to talk, learning how to walk, run, make our own decisions, and understand rules. And that's a lot for a brain to process. But yet, yeah, like no more like it can create blockages. It can create where like really call milestone, and then sometimes, you know, like we lose like really important time in their lives because it will take even longer yoteology take care of Tondana. And I've realized a lot, which breaks my heart, is that like and then it shows in our children. And so like compared to Mikana. It's not that we're shy or anything. It's just that we didn't know. We didn't know we could speak, or we didn't know that we should talk. And so it poses like speech delays, and it makes people wonder, yeah, develop more cognitive delay, like brain development. And so allowing kids to be around each other, allowing kids to be around like other adults, help them understand the world in a different light. So then 건더이어코 구사타서 remind everyone that why it's so important to have early intervention, because like the reach school age or even beyond that, because the most important time for brain develop is from like birth to 8 years old. And then there's like different time periods. And so, you know, it's so impactful and that they can be at the benchmark that they should be. It's not that it's an expectation, but it helps give you a general understanding of where the child should be at that time.
No, like you said, I mean, I love that what you said about the first 2,000 days is when of life is when, you know, your brain is multiplying, growing, and absorbing everything. So that's such a good visualization for me, and hopefully for making it easy to understand that the first, you know, alpan, no, they are alive, they're learning things. I mean, as early. I was just watching, you know, I sometimes go down a rabbit hole on Instagram Reels, and I saw this one that was saying that, you know, cái tình yêu thật mua ở bên lì là ở bên no ở bên vấn thì thứ nữ thứ bao gọn à, you know, they're already learning you, they're already learning their environment, they're already understanding all of that. So I think it's interesting talk about it that oh give me y'all speech about it's like oh no they are learning everything. And even if cái tình yêu more autism, you need to highlight it. It got the oh, you know, the chipara good to me on the chipara you know, kind of, I've been in the field for a while, and I had my first interaction with a Hmong family. Gosh, it was before the pandemic, so I feel like everything after before the pandemic was a little bit of a blur. You know, whether it was COVID itself, but I remember I met this family before COVID. It did see it's the first time that Gunnar, either Hmong parent, talk about like the mignon with autism, and it broke my
Hmm.
heart because Guyan Bada the mignon right? Of course, every person that is a parent. However, when you lack the understanding of the child's diagnosis, yeah, let's talk about the cultural stigma of your child having a disability, and you know that thôi bạn nào lo tay chỉ lo tay bỏ yêu thì mình nhỏ lấy yên lấy chỉ bỏ hay lấy chỉ bỏ đó yêu thả so you cứ chỉ đó bỏ đó là thả thế. So then over time you chỉ một you don't have a space where you can feel like you can share. So over time, you
Hmm.
learn coping mechanisms, and you just learn. I'm assuming you learn how to speak about your child in a way that you assume everyone understands it. So without knowing all that, right? That you know, I mean, obviously he knows because he was at my clinic where I worked, and I was the person that was helping with the eval that day. And you know, I asked him, I said, "Well, tell me about the inside." You know, he goes, "Oh, the butt one, the cage, bought it, Julia," and
Oh,
it broke my heart because I was like,
I know that broke mine too.
Oh, and she at the time, she was just, like, not even 10. And then that broke my heart even more because I thought, "For how many years you didn't seek services for your child?" Because 주말에도 like or even in your go get services. They will help your child, help her to, work on her daily living skills, help her to communicate with you guys. And then for your generalized description for your child to be that, it broke my heart. And so I thought, like early on, I was still a baby BCBA, so I wasn't really sure how to navigate that, right? Be like, so. But today, if I met you today, I would probably correct them right away and say, "Oh, 그尊敬哈," you know what I mean? And it really comes with understanding the culture, understanding that it comes from that lack of vocabulary, that lack of understanding, that lack of feeling safe in your community, that you can have open communication and conversations.
Mhm.
You and I, people like you and I, need to kind of reform it and allow
Yes.
them to see that our kiddos with autism are amazing. They're so
Yes.
smart. They know things that we don't know. They can process
Mhm.
things faster than we can. So it's like, how do we channel that? How do we take that skill and channel that and help him to do something in life with that, right? So that's like my goal.
Mhm.
Whenever I go into working with any family, any kiddo, it's like, how do I find your superpower and harness that to help you, to do whatever it is that, makes you live your best life. So, I think these are just some of the things that, if we can kind of shift the conversations that way, I think it would help our Hmong parents a lot. So then, what do you think are some of the factors that prevent Hmong parents from entrusting early intervention with assisting their child, right? Because in Hmong, like, and it's the same thing. It sounds like that we all hear, oh, let your mail, let money, let money go ready, or I hear a lot of, "Oh, need your brother, his sister, love they should have it's okay," and it's like they receive them when they are, 4 or 5, right? And I see them as
Mhm.
early as 18 months, and we can only advocate and educate, but ultimately it comes down to the parents to make those decisions and get something going. But sometimes there are a lot of cases where they're just like, "Nope, we can't," well, for one reason or another, whether it's financial or just transportation sometimes is an issue, whatever the reason is. But sometimes when it's just a matter of like they just are afraid and untrusting of
Mhm.
the system. So yeah, so like, what do you think of the your experience? Like, what do you think are some factors that prevent Hmong parents from trusting the system, the early intervention process to help their kiddo?
I find it interesting because I'm like, oh my gosh, you like read everything on my brain already. It is very true about our community. I reflect on it a lot and try to think about like what can we do, but ultimately like I have to backtrack and see where it was like back then. And it is true where everything is very like negative based because we came from a survival state.
Mhm.
We all came from war. We all came from, all of that. So all of that unprocessing takes a while. All of that um, learning how America works is ever going. And so they are scared because they don't know what's the best route. And so that's another thing that I want to do is provide a different light to our Hmong community. I do find it very enlightening when I get to have these discussions with where we talk about these children. They are super smart, and we need to continue having these positive conversations because we can always look at the wrongs and the downsides and all of that, but that doesn't help anything. That doesn't serve anybody's purpose. And so I really feel that we constantly get into that fear mindset because we are just so used to it and we
Mhm.
don't know how to trust people. And so, I ultimately think like how, but it does take you. It does take me. It takes this podcast. It takes having that open conversation and meeting them exactly where they need to be met. And those stories are so true because it breaks my heart hearing so many people said, I wish that I did it sooner.
Mhm.
So I do want to push and advocate, but then people do have their own projections, 그 쥐도 요지, 대구 주먹이 여보요. And so then in their eyes, I am not credible. But then we need to change that mindset to see that Kuya maganda for specifically this. They're
Mhm.
going sa bani. And like what you mentioned, transportation, and just we're too busy. We're too, we hear all these excuses all the time. But what
Mhm.
can we do to meet you where you can, even if it's just because I see around where they're like, oh, yeah, we could do speech, and the speech comes at home, or like I just mentioned to a friend of mine where I'm like, did you know? And so I started telling her about the IEP process. I started
Mhm.
telling her about the services. I started telling her about the support she can receive through all of that. And so, like, I don't think that they know, but then it's one of those things that, like, you never know what to look for in the first place, anyways.
Right.
It is so impactful that, you take that step and trust the professionals and understand when you have these questions, ask them because that's why they are there for. And they want the best quality life for you and your child because they want to have the child thrive in the way you envision life for them.
Mhm.
And so, I really hope that like more we can start being open-minded to understand what support feels like, to understand the
Mhm.
or even if you want to send them to preschool, if they have that IEP,
Mhm.
tell them, hey, we don't have transportation. They are obligated to pick your child up and take them home. And they want to make sure that we are doing what we can to ensure the quality life that your child deserves.
Yes, for sure. I think you hit on a few points that I wanted to kind of elaborate on. We are a very much still very young uh, people. We still are
Mhm,
learning and evolving, and I think a lot of our parents, even if you are like, we feel like you've kind of explored what it's like living in America, and you know the rules, you know how to access services, access things, but every weekend you see, we talk to our parents or our uncles and aunts and uncles and cousins, and when everyone's just so foreign to them and they have no guiding information, and you're kind of feeling kind of lost, and
mhm,
I think that sometimes too can be a factor that prevents them from, understanding the system. And so we have to, I think for me, I feel like, it's not enough just to like coach the parents. We got to coach the whole community as a whole. So everyone can be a support to the parents who need it the most. And then we talk about, the parents. You mentioned that, we need to entrust the professionals. And I actually had another guest on, and we were talking about that. And she made a really good point that sometimes even the professionals, yes, they're the subject matter expert, but ultimately, Galia, it falls on you as a parent to do the research
mhm,
to find out what's available in your county, in your state, what's due to your child, whether it's financially or, opportunities for them. And then keep those people accountable for making ensuring that you get those services. And I think that's where a lot of fallout comes when parents are like, there was no one to guide me. I didn't know what to do. So I didn't do anything. Right. So I mean, just to be fair, that happens too. So yeah, we should trust the professionals to be doing their jobs. But at the end of the day, you are the parent. You have to be the one that goes out there and become educated on what you need to do to be the best advocate for your kiddo. And sometimes, like I said, that's why it's not enough just to educate our parents, but educate the whole community so that we can provide this a constant, ongoing support system for them as well, because it can feel so overwhelming and it can feel so lonely. And I hope that if I'm still doing this podcast in, I don't know, the next 5 years, 10 years, I can say finally we've achieved a point in time where Hmong families are like, I feel supported. I don't feel alone. If I know where to get help. I know, where the supports are, because right now a lot of what I'm hearing is we're going through this alone. No one understands. We don't know, you know, who will listen to us. And I recently followed up with some families, and I said, "Hey, after the podcast, did your family reach out to you, and have you guys been able to, talk? And are they, do you feel like the feedback has been more positive?" And the answer was, nobody's reached out, and it broke my heart. I thought,
Oh,
yeah, I was like, well, that's life, and that sucks. But I think that, again, it takes a while, I think, to transform a culture, a people to understand
it does.
things, right? And so, I mean, look, I'm just glad that we're even talking about it, to be very honest with
Hmm.
you. So, yeah, there's a lot of factors, and depending on where you live, what your community looks like, but I think that the number one hurdle sometimes is yourself, right? The parent
Yes.
if they are unsure or they have their own things that they're dealing with, it's really hard to overcome that and say, I have to do this for my child, but where do I start, right? Because once you get over that hurdle, it's like, but where do I start? And so, um, outside of ABA, and you were in the classroom, what are some early intervention strategies and techniques that you felt were beneficial to kiddos who are in early intervention, and then things that you maybe shared with the parents and said, this simple tip and trick is super helpful for you guys at this stage in your child's development.
Oh, I love it. The more I reflect about who I was as Miss Yang, I'm like, wow, she's amazing, really. Allowing them to be their own individual. I think that kind of like what you mentioned earlier, as parents and at home, you just want what's convenient. They're crying, they're whatever, you know your child best, you go ahead. And so that is a way of communication, correct? And then at school, the teacher doesn't know that. And
Mm-hmm.
so then they have to learn a new way to communicate. And so um, things like that is very impactful for them to learn how to find a way to communicate with others. I think that's really important, as well as understanding structure and routine, because
Yeah.
at home, which I understand is free range, because I would not want my home to be structured and routine either. But going into a classroom, it helps them understand what they need to do and exactly what's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
when you do that every day, the child can feel safe and they can understand how this environment works and they're able to freely explore. And so, in my classroom, I tackle like a lot. I do a visual schedule of the day, and as we're done with one item, I remove it. And so they can visually see that they're getting closer and closer to going home. So
Mm-hmm.
every day they can start seeing where we're at, and then they can understand when it's almost time to go home. And we can also give them the affirmation piece like, oh, it's not time to go home yet. You still need to go outside, eat snack, take a nap, then you go home. And so then they can process that in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk more about how I specifically change it for my children's with special needs, because that is also so impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Because the most important part is learning how to break through and learn through their eyes and learn and teach them and their perspectives. So I had a student, I'm so glad they told me this. Um, he didn't speak, but he sure knew how to read. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was the way to that was the bridge to open that door for him. And so we wrote everything out and he would read it out loud. And so that's how he learned his speech piece, as well as like I do self-talk. And I think that that's something we need to continue doing in general. It gives people a better understanding of why you're doing it and how you're doing it. So I would constantly be like, I'm walking to the light switch, and because it's getting too loud. And then when I turn it off, that's when I want you guys to be quiet and you look at me to get your attention. That gives them an understanding of why I turned off the light. Because if I just turn it off, they'll be scared.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing as my students with special needs, where we had to go from my classroom to the cafeteria, And he was terrified because he was like, "Oh my gosh, where are you taking me now? Because I'm used to just going home, but now you're taking me to school and I just got used to your room. Where are you taking me?" And so I would have to hold his hand. And I'm like, you can trust me. We have to go eat. So we
Mhm.
need to walk to the cafeteria so then we can sit down and eat together. And that's the place where we eat our food. So self-talk is also a very important early intervention strategy to help the child process that,
Mhm.
hearing it instead of just visually seeing, because children learn in all aspects. And then it is our job to provide as much resources to see where they learn best. Another technique that I had learned, which is amazing, is see what sensory that they gravitate towards more and then use it while they are at another area that you do not like. So I had a student, he hated water, but we obviously had to wash hands.
Yeah.
And so it was a nightmare at first because it's kind of like, "Well, how do we do this piece, you
Yeah.
know?"
Yeah.
And so, because at home, I don't know how they take care of it, but it wasn't a problem at home. We question like, hey, how are meals like? How is this? Like, is there bath time? We try to like have these open conversations. And so, a technique I learned was that because this child loves singing, we sang while we washed hands. And
Yeah.
so he didn't even remember that he was washing hands because we sang. But as it went on, then he felt more comfortable with water. He started seeing how everyone did it. He took accountability and he took ownership of it, and he was so proud of himself that he got to that level. And
Yeah.
so, like it is so important to one, provide different ways of teaching them through like seeing, through hearing, through feeling, through touching all of our senses, and then also see where the weakness is and help strengthen that with one of their strengths. And I love all these techniques. And another one that I do want to continuously incorporate, especially with Hmong, is emotions and self-regulation. So look, the first thing that I ever want to do is be able to connect with my students. I
Mhm.
want them to know that I am a safe adult, that they can entrust in me. And through that, they're able to learn, because when you're in a space where you can't trust someone, you're in a space that you don't know what's going on, you are more worried about other things like, how do I get out of here? When am I leaving? All these other things. But then when you are at a space where you know that you're safe, you're at a space that you can entrust the adults around you, then you can feel more calm and you can feel more relaxed and you're more willing to do things. And so that's one of the first things I do. Um, During the beginning of the school year, or when a new student comes in, is I want to make sure that I can meet them at their needs and have them understand that they can entrust in me. And so it took a lot. And I kind of like what you said, you really have to dig within yourself. It ultimately is you, and then when you change and you provide that experience for them, they in return change and they in return can give that like capability of whatever that they have been wanting to express and show, because sometimes they just want you to communicate with them in the way they know, which is probably through pictures, which is probably through like whatever. And so what we need to do is understand how to communicate back to them as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned like how he washed his hands at home versus what he's now doing at school, and you're wondering like, does he even wash his hands at home?
Yeah.
That's one of a disconnect too. Is when we talk with parents, there's this sense of, oh well, at home they're great. We're not sure why he's struggling at school, or vice versa. At school they're great, but at home we're really struggling. So it's so important to have that open communication with your teachers and as a parent to be honest too. Like, there's no one here that's going to judge you. We just want to help and make sure that whatever we're teaching them at at school or at the clinic that they're being successful, well, we're going to show you so you can do it at home. And whatever's working at home for you, we want to know so that he can be successful at home, because having that open line of communication is really important. So yeah, thanks for all those tips. Those are really, really great. I think as you were talking through them, I was thinking in my head, like, oh yeah, that's this strategy. That's this strategy that we use in ABA. So even within our group, for a long time, my co-founder and I, we were like, we're not here to convince anybody of ABA. We just want to disseminate information, and then you go and do your own research and figure out what works for you and your kiddo. But then it's funny because some people are like, ABA essentially is just everything that you're probably already doing that's working, and all the science did was put a label on it, named it something, and then
Mm-hmm.
and modify it to make sure that we're scientists, and that we're collecting data and making sure that we're actually making progress so that we don't regress, right? And so it's just interesting that all those strategies that you mentioned, I'm like, yeah, we all should be using those strategies. And I think sometimes, I think it goes back to that, like you said, some people are still like survivor mode. Some of us,
Mm-hmm.
some of us are trying to break those cycles and be like, let's embrace what we have seen that is working in these last. So I'm 40, so I was born in a refugee camp. I'm 40, so I'll just say, broadly, 40, 50 years of being in the United States. Um, I think that the understanding of the school system is really still a little bit of a disconnect. I see that in states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, and possibly California, where there are home schools. I hope that people have connected the dots there for families and understanding the education system, and also the education system for your kid with a disability. What does that look like? How do we support you? How do we help you to understand? And I'm curious to know how those conversations are going. But if you're not fortunate enough to live in a state that provides a Hmong school like that, with Hmong professionals who can help you understand this whole process, it can be daunting, because I think as a Hmong people, we always have felt that it's like it's us against them, right? Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how I can really trust you, because, you never really took the time to ask me the questions that would make me feel secure and comfortable. All I know is that I had to send my kid to your school. And then what I hear a lot is, we just assume that the school is doing the best that they can do for our kid. And yeah, I think that's true. But again, as a parent, like, I don't want you to just show up to IEP meetings because they asked you to once a year. I want you to have questions. I want you to understand this IEP. I want you to understand your rights, your child's rights. We want to dive deeper in there into that. But like, how do you do that if you've never Jamotha you before, right? Jamotha told you
Yes.
the importance of this legal document, like, you have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of power and say so in this. We're not just there to receive information. You're also there to educate them on your child, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
the school system, as you've seen it, like, what is a missing link in our Hmong communities? Understanding of disability in the education system and how they kind of support each other. And because I feel like there's a lot of reliance on the school system to just do it all for our kids, and it's like, well, we got to take some of that power back and some of that accountability back. And having been in the school system, like, what is the missing link for our home parents to understand that the school system is great, we do this, but at some point, you have to shoulder some of that responsibility.
Yes, as I observe, how it was for me, because Jogo Kaya Minimikabayo, and the Gumo reflects on Betamona and Gumosa, they're like ultimately, Mikana, like the ball, so they know, but yo, like the ball hit there, yet they're like that they feel is not right. Loying advocate, loyal take
Mhm.
initiative. So lo tu minyo, lo so lo tu king. The sheep it always just boils down to like our how our upbringing was, right? So ultimately all of us children grew up like submissive. All of us was just told what to do,
Mhm.
right? And so then you have to be because I was considered a trouble child because I always asked why.
Mhm.
Because they teach you that. They teach you to continuously start questioning. And so then, it became like a power struggle, but it is essentially not. But because more thing, like very, very little that starts asking why and want to have a deeper understanding, be it joy, became the professionals. We are the ones that are advocating for ban topic of Montreal. And then the rest of them are still kind of like, oh, I need to listen to mom and dad. Mom and dad knows best. I need to just listen to elders because they know best. But it's just kind of like, they nona, like it's totally different because there is no power struggle at all. It's nothing about who is right, who is wrong. It's all about how we can provide this experience to uplift your child and help them learn in the way that they know how. And so then I truly believe that like we need to start having people take ownership of their like choices and remind them and also kind of, just I mean, I really wish that we can like just be like, do this, this is the best way option, this is all of that. But you can't. And everyone has their own like but in the IEP, nothing should be a surprise. You should really tackle it down. Even like I started up IEP or for me I have like 5 6 IEPs a year, and it's
Mm-hmm.
heavy work. And so we really have to get to know the child. And popping questions on, there are questions where we do ask parents because we want them to be involved. We want them to understand that this paperwork is not just paperwork to keep us all busy,
Right.
right? Being like the teachers already have a lesson plan created for everyone, but then we understand that your child needs more support, and we want to give you the best way possible to have them meet their needs. And so there are questions in IEP like, what do you envision for your child in your life? So we want them to understand that these are things that they need to think of till grade school, like what you mentioned, and that like as much as some skills should be academic, a lot of it, if you're wanting your child just to be able to acknowledge you as a mother, or there are goals like that, like
Mm-hmm.
which picture is mommy, and it can really help them because it is all about the child and see where their needs to be met. And like everything in IP should not be a surprise. I really didn't know that not a lot of people don't communicate with the teachers because me as a preschool teacher, I talk to the parents all the time, but I think it's different because as the kids grow older, the communication with teachers lessen.
Yeah.
And maybe because I'm just a very passionate teacher, so I always share all these things like, oh, they
Mm-hmm.
did this, they did that. And, like to me, it brings so much joy to be able to have a conversation with someone else that is connected to the child, and to me, I always want to highlight all of that. So then when we have a meeting, it's no surprise, and that we do offer all of these and continuously let them know, like, you have the right for this, you have the right for that. If you do not like any of these goals,
Mm-hmm.
we can rewrite it,
Yeah.
because I like to tell the parents upfront first about what we're doing in the classroom, about the goals that we have for the child. And so when they go into the IEP meeting, it's not a surprise. But ultimately, if they do not like it still, the IEP meeting, everyone is there to have an open discussion to
Mm-hmm.
further, develop something that meets his needs. And everyone can add other inputs that maybe I didn't see or
Right.
maybe the parent didn't see. And so, like, we really need to sometimes really hide, even if it's just silly things, like, oh, we're afraid that he's not potty trained, you won't take him in. Like, oh no, like we will have a plan in action. What would you like for us to do? What are you guys doing at home to help encourage the child? And so then like every single little worry that you have, go ahead and address it. Like you may feel like it's a lot or a burden, but it's better to ask more questions than to not have asked at all.
Yeah, for sure. We started our group about 2 years ago, and at first we had parents who would, message us questions, and they're like, "We have an IP meeting coming up, and it's maybe our first, and we're not quite sure what to do." And as BCBAs, we're like, "Well, let me tell you, all the things we recommend." But for our parents, when we walk them through IEPs, it was so um, validating when all the parents, separate cases, they came back and they're like, I couldn't believe that they listened to me. I couldn't believe that I could ask for this, and they said yes. And so we were like, "Yeah, you can. You can ask for things, but you got you ask now, let you offer tell, right? So you have
Mhm.
to remember that, or you got you ask now, they got the if it's a small ask for them and they're like, yeah, we can do that. And it like makes your child's life easier at school. Why not? The worst thing
Mhm.
they can say is no. And then you can still try to make it happen. We talk about this as specific to Hmong families, but any parents, any families going through this process, like, if you know that there's something that can help your child, trust me that your team wants your child to be successful. But you can try asana, you're the one that's getting in the way of your child being successful, right?
Mhm.
So talk to your team. They're there to help you, to listen to you, and again, like you said, like you're just that amazing type of teacher and who's like super aware and wants parents to know everything. And then I've also learned through the years with my kiddos going through school that, you're right. As you go up in the grades, the teachers talk to you less. And that's really hard for me. And then I realized, oh wait, Tia, they can't focus just on your kid. They have all these other like this the teachers have a lot to do. And so, I appreciate any piece of nugget that they can share with me about how my child's doing. But take advantage of that while the teachers are still willing to be that accommodating and that, wanting to share information with you and kind of really like it really is like a full-time job on top of your full-time job to guide your child's
Mhm.
education, to invest your time and energy in this relationship with a teacher. Going back to how like there's a disconnect. So here are some things you can do, right? Here's a different viewpoint. Look at this teacher as like your partner inside the school that's going to help you to ensure that your child gets the best education that they can, and you're going to be their best friend that year. You're going to make them like you. You're going to let them know that you are on top of everything because every time they reach out, you're going to reach back. And Jitson Chai like hi talk a little more and more information for you because now they know that you're interested, right? Because I think a lot of teachers just assume that parents are just overwhelmed, don't want to know, so they just they try to reduce that stress. But if you're the parent that wants to know, let them know that you're the parent that wants to know. Whatever parent you type you want to be it, do it. Teachers need to know. You can't assume that they, want to be like Aaliyah and share everything all the time because
Mhm.
it's after a while it's big and time investment on your end too, right? And so you kind of like parents kind of drift off as the school year goes. But as a parent, if that's important to you, definitely pursue that relationship with your teacher in terms of making sure you have a really good open communication and know that you can do that for every single grade going up. So yeah, those are some really great points that you make, Kalia. I'm sure we could talk this subject to death because
Yeah.
there's so much more, and I think it sounds so simple, yeah. It's just like "Nakatonekotasuma." But it's like you think about like, how we were raised to never question authority, to accept what's given to us, just be thankful that they're even helping us, right? And this just this mentality of like, 只早了，只早讲要一盏了，就把有的没有了, all that stuff, right? That goes into play, that you're like doing it like just on autopilot because that's just how we were raised. But then you realize, oh wait, I have a voice too, because I need to have a
Mhm.
voice so that my child can have a voice, right? So how do you get there, right? You get there by listening to podcasts like this, listening to people like me. You can do it. You can.
Yeah.
Possible. And it's just been so amazing to watch some of our Hmong parents like flourish and know that, oh, okay, now 我淘到了，了，了，孩子，了，爸爸跟你，all I had to do was just ask. It's so empowering for them, and it's been so amazing to watch that transformation and know that at the end of the day, who stands to benefit? Their child. And so, why wouldn't you? So thank you for contributing to this conversation. And I'm so excited to see what you do in the future with this. And I love your passion. I love your advocacy too. And I think that to speak about this so openly, it takes a very special person because thank you for kind of like, being a cheerleader for. Hello, listeners. If you are hearing this ad, thank you so very much for taking the time to give my little podcast some love and attention. I hope that you will share your favorite episodes with your family and friends and that they also do the same. I know there are some Hmong families out there who don't know about this safe space I've created where you can hear the stories of Hmong families and Hmong professionals talking about their experiences with autism. This podcast is produced by Thea Yali Consulting LLC. I am Thea, and I wanted to take a minute to invite you to check out another passion project of mine that was recently launched. I created an online course entitled The Lifespan of Parenting Your Child with Autism for any and all parents who have a child with a disability. The online course is spoken in Hmonglish with English subtitles so that all parents can access this information that I share about your 18-month-old all the way to old age. This course is designed to empower you to become your child's best advocate with me as your guide. As a bonus and special thank you for hearing this ad on the Let's Talk About Autism in Hmonglish podcast, DM me and I'll send you a 30% off coupon. Talk soon! If you are in North Carolina, there will be an event coming soon in April, actually, and you will get to meet me and Kalia. We talk about the Hmong community and having conversations, right? Normalizing these conversations, and then not just having conversation, but like having really positive and empowering conversations that make parents leave and go, "Oh, we can do this." You know, there's hope, there's strategies, there's actually like tangible things that we can do. So I think that I think there's something to be said of an in-person event, and that's just something like when this whole passion project happened for me a few years ago. I thought one day, and I don't know. I think I shared with you. I'm from North Carolina. Like I lived there for like 20 years of my life, so I don't care wherever I go. I still feel like a North Carolina person, North Carolina girl. And so I always said I would love to take what I do, how I want to contribute to the Hmong autism community and take it back to North Carolina. And then I was looking for like who can I collaborate with? And it just so happened that I went to high school with an amazing woman who is now a co-founder of a nonprofit, the North Carolina Hmong Women's Association in North Carolina. And it is just people having similar visions and hopes and dreams for their community and coming together. So, Kalia, I'm so excited to have you on board to kind of, continue this my passion. It's partly my passion project, but I think everyone too, right, has a similar vision, and we're all putting it together and hopefully starting a new thing for our home community to know that we can have these conversations, we can have these positive, empowering conversations to help each other. We don't have to um, continue to feel like we're alone, that you'll listen to me, and I'm afraid of being judged. We talk a little bit about the shame and guilt that comes with all of this at this territory. We want to really break down those walls and say, hey, they exist, but here's how we forward, right? Here to help support you. And so I'm really excited for that.
Yes, me too. I just cannot believe about how we continuously get interconnected. And I'm just like, this is amazing. And I finally get to meet you in person. I really love it because, we get to come together and we can actually create a bigger impact. I want to be the one that advocates because that was my vision and purpose, like como ahorita na kulo, my goal was to always come back to the Hmong community, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how. But then, like, now, especially through powering through North Carolina Hmong Women Association, it is just so amazing to be with a group of women who wants to bring that back to their community, everything that we have learned, and that now we can incorporate it into Hmong and Bansanga and I'm just like, this is so beautiful to see that we all come from different walks of lives, and yet we have like similar goals and visions, and we come together to bring our community up. And I love it. So I'm super excited for our um our event as well as everything that is happening here in North Carolina. And I'm just so impressed about how the whole community wants to, be like we are still powering through and we're like, we don't care what obstacle there is anymore. We want to make sure that we are loud and that we want to make sure that everyone is being seen, that their light is shining, and that
Mhm.
we no longer have to be silenced.
Yeah, I think this is the time, right? And I've been telling Sandra and all the other ladies that I've been had the honor to be collaborating with is that I love it when projects come together organically, right? Where someone's like, "This is my passion project," and you're like, "That's me too," and then it's like, "How do we work together to make it happen?" And it's just been so beautiful, and I've just been so it's all about timing, right? Like maybe you've been wanting this for a long time. I know I've been wanting for a long time, but it had to be like the right time for all the different pieces to fall into place. And when it does like this, and it's just so beautiful, and I'm excited for the community to benefit from all of this. So thank you, Kalia, for joining me today and sharing your wealth of knowledge. I've learned a lot. So I hope that this early intervention piece has been helpful for some parents who are kind of like on the fence about it, and kind of like, oh, come here, and then I think for me, again, it was that very concrete. The 2000 days are so critical. And it's like, oh, I hope that sets a fire under a lot of parents.
Mhm.
They really take that piece and go, okay, more diagnosis law, do something. Don't do nothing, right? So that's
Mhm.
really powerful for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me and having this platform. I just applaud you for all of the everything that you have done to have made it this far. It's amazing. I've listened to all your podcasts and I'm
Uh-huh.
just like, wow, she's so amazing to have this space. She made space to make this happen. So I'm just like, that's amazing. I'm so proud that we have a Hmong sister who was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make this happen. And you did. So I love it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without the support and encouragement of everybody. So thank you for being a listener. And so thank you for that.
No problem. Well, I will see you in April.
Yes, ma'am. End of April, everybody. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.